Well, we are back live here at CES, and it's been a great day today, talking all about the amazing things that are happening. And as always, this is the Peggy Smedley Show. And right now, I'm excited to have Sachin, who is... Now, Sachin, tell us a little bit about your title. You are doing some amazing things right now, but your title is just, you are now the...
It's too long.
Yeah, it's the Vice President of Strategy and Partners, Automotive,
yes.
Aerospace and Defense, involved in Watson. I keeps going on and on.
So
tell us that title.
Let me break it down. Firstly, Peggy, good morning and thanks for having me here. It's amazing to be back in Vegas at CES. It's always crazy, but crazy fun. So, so coming back to my title, it is the longest title probably in IBM, and it's for a reason. Let me try and break it down. So I'm the Global Automotive and Aerospace and Defense Strategy and Solutions Leader. So, in essence, what my role is really taking all of IBM's digital capabilities across Watson, Internet of Things, our cloud business unit, analytics, as well as IBM research, and putting an industry lens on it and developing new industry solutions that resonate with our customers, which is really automotive OEMs and tier 1 suppliers. So it's really demystifying our digital capabilities around AI, IoT, blockchain, etc. So as you know, Watson's a $1 billion brand by itself, but the question I still get asked most often is, I get Watson, but how are you applying Watson or IoT or blockchain in automotive? Can you break that down for me? So I'm that bridge between our technology capabilities and then the industry team. So that's why the long title.
It's amazing because when we first started talking about years ago, IBM didn't want to call it M2M. They didn't want to call it IoT. They had Watson, right? Now today, look at what we're talking about. We're talking about Watson. Now we're talking about IoT, but we're talking about blockchain. I mean, it's an amazing evolution of this technology. And ultimately, what are we really talking about for enterprises and all these things? We're talking about the data to help make really good business decisions. And your partners are all critical players in that, because at the end of the day, what Watson's doing, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is helping to take and extrapolate all this information to make better services for your customers, and that information that you gather that Watson takes and helps for any industry in any enterprise, right?
Absolutely, Peggy. You're right. I mean, data is the new natural resource, as our chairman and CEO rightly calls it. From an automotive perspective, with the now with everything being connected vehicles, just to put things in the industry context, connected vehicle generates about 350 megabytes of data per second. And with autonomous vehicles, we're talking about a gigabyte of data per second. Now, only 1% of that data today is being put to any use. And that's where cognitive technology comes in, or AI comes in, when combined with IoT. Which is really just the connectivity, but driving new insights out of that data in a real-time context, because you're talking about people's lives. 94% of accidents are caused by human error, and by applying AI and analytics and these capabilities both at the edge and in the cloud, I mean, we are doing some amazing things. So I'm really excited and lucky to be a part of this at this moment in time.
Isn't that amazing when we think about it, when we look at AI and we look at the cloud and to the edge? Would we ever have thought 5-10 years ago we could look at taking autonomous information and making it autonomous driving, that we could ultimately save lives by taking it out of the hands of the driver? Did you really think that we would be able to do that?
Well, I don't think anyone imagined that. Obviously, AI-enabled cars, the idea of an AI-enabled car has been out there from the 80s, and then Star Wars. We've all seen it and maybe even imagined it, but no one thought it would become reality and this fast, right? Things are changing too fast, and I think we've reached a tipping point with AI and IoT now, really what I call it's a match made in the clouds. And now with blockchain coming to that, and you know, the way IBM looks at blockchain is it'll do for transactions what the internet did for information. So take our new alliance with ZF and UBS around blockchain-enabled connected vehicle payments. We actually have it on display here in an autonomous car with ZF. And what that is we've got a Hyperledger client embedded in the vehicle itself, and the car will pay for it itself using IBM's Hyperledger blockchain, and it'll pay for a charging station, pay for gas, pay for any payments by itself. So it's really all these emerging technologies coming together, and by 2020 I think it'll be a fascinating world.
Will we take that blockchain and we say this transactional side of things,
Yeah.
will we be able to do it in a cryptocurrency way or just in a transactional way that we want? Because that's where, I hate to say rubber meets the road, that
Yeah.
we're talking about, that I think we still haven't figured out, because we're at that point of who controls it. And I think that's where people get nervous, because we haven't really figured out truly what that blockchain means. I think we're just starting to understand it, and blockchain has a lot of different definitions to a lot of different people right now.
Yes, no, I think, you know, we are still fairly early in the blockchain cryptocurrency era, if you will, but things are moving too fast. You know, we've rapidly deployed blockchain proof of concepts across industries. I don't know if you've heard about the Walmart case study as an example, but that's a fascinating one. The you know, global vice president of food safety at Walmart basically walked in with a mango from a store into his team meeting, and he said, the goal of today is to go find out where this was sourced from. And apparently it took almost a week for the team to come back with an answer, which is relatively quick in today's world. And then you know, we applied blockchain to it, and that time came down from 7 days to, I believe, 60 seconds or few seconds basically. So and now that has turned into an industry-wide consortium. We obviously now applying that to logistics with Maersk, and now in automotive as well. We've I gave you ZF as one example, but we've now completed various pilots of blockchain for parts traceability, for warranty recalls, and even you know, software-defined vehicle with over-the-air updates becoming more and more common. You know, when you think of vehicle and how complex a vehicle's become today, the S-Class I think has 500 million lines of code. And autonomous vehicles may have 1 billion lines of code in the near future, compared to a Dreamliner, which is probably 1.7 million lines of code. So when you make over-the-air updates, and with 1,000 suppliers contributing to each update, how do you keep track of, you know, the requirements, the level of testing for each change that has gone in? So blockchain's doing, I think, amazing things for every industry, and we have, you know, great use cases in mind that, you know, are already in play. But coming to cryptocurrency, I think there's a lot of speculation right now, especially with how volatile, you know, Bitcoin or Litecoin or any of these cryptocurrencies have been, with really no control behind it. But that's the idea. I mean, that's why people are fascinated by it, but I think it's just the beginning.
Will we have to get more companies to support blockchain, almost kind of like, because we lack some interoperability, and which is what you talked about, you know, more, I guess I don't want to know if it's standards or groups to say we support this blockchain in order to be able to make it work within industry?
Yeah, so I think, you know, with the, there are a lot of industry standards already, let's say blockchain standards. But now what every industry is doing is looking at, what does blockchain mean to my industry? What private networks can I launch on blockchain, and pick any platform, whether it's IBM's Hyperledger project, or you can take Ethereum or any of the other platforms out there, but industries are now starting to evaluate what platforms they want to launch on a private network, which business partners they want on these networks. So I think 2018 will be a fascinating year to just watch the blockchain space emerge. We are in various discussions around some of these private networks that will be announced soon, but I think this is a good year to watch for these.
Looking at now the automotive industry, we're seeing a lot of excitement. We talk about autonomous vehicles. We talk about what year we're going to see it. Do we have to really work to enable an infrastructure now? Because we're all talking about having this, and if we're going to enable this blockchain to make it happen, do we also have to get our cities involved to make blockchain, autonomous vehicles all come together? It seems like we have to have a community, which you talk about partners, because that's where you're very engaged in. Do we have to, it seems like we have to have public-private partnerships. It seems like there's a lot that has to come together to make this all work. Are we there yet, or we still have a lot more terrain to go to make this all work?
Yeah, I think we've made a lot of advancement with both the public and the private sector coming together to talk about what autonomous means to our cities, our lives, and what does that mean to infrastructure requirements, which clearly are lacking. And when you compare US to more to Asia Pacific, I mean, there's a long way to go in terms of having the right infrastructure, let alone for autonomous, but even for electric vehicles to go mainstream. Are there enough charging stations out there? People have a new kind of anxiety these days. It's called range anxiety with electric vehicles. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but things are moving very fast. NHTSA is playing a big role with the auto OEMs. A lot of tier 1 suppliers are playing their part to bring all these different bodies together to develop the right standards, to discuss the right infrastructure requirements and investments that need to happen. Again, I think it's still work in progress, and 2025 is when all of this will come together. I think autonomous technology is more or less ready. We're already seeing it on the streets today in a lot of different ways, at least at level 4. But to your point, the infrastructure is still not there yet. And secondly, how autonomous vehicles will coexist with human-driven vehicles is another problem we still need to solve. What I often say, what happens when 2 autonomous vehicles and 2 human-driven vehicles show up at an intersection? What happens then? How do they communicate with each other? If there are pedestrians crossing, how do you communicate with them? So there are a lot of startups that are now focusing on some of this communication as well, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, and then vehicle to people. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
Do we still have a lot of work in mindset with how consumers perceive? Or I was on a panel yesterday, and IBM was there.
Yeah.
You were part of that, and we asked the audience, and about half of the audience was comfortable with autonomous vehicles. The other half of the audience was not. And it was interesting. Do you still believe we still have a lot of work to convince consumers that being in an autonomous vehicle is okay? Or are we making headway there as well?
Yeah, I think we are making headway. Shows like these where autonomous vehicles are are showcased. You can actually ride in one, goes a long way to address concerns people may have. Like I said, 94% of accidents are caused by human error. So autonomous vehicles, once they are fully tested, will be more safer. At one point in time, we look back and say, really, did we let humans drive vehicles? That's
our children aren't going to have
I'll tell you a funny story. We recently moved to Tampa, and with Hurricane Irma heading our way, we had to basically get in our car, head to Atlanta. A 5-hour journey took about 12 hours just because everyone was leaving I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it was about midnight where we stopped to get gas, and as we left the gas station, my 5-year-old goes, I need McDonald's. And the mother in the car goes with the 1-year-old, nope, we're heading straight to the hotel, we can get some tomorrow. And my 5-year-old says, damn, I need my own self-driving car. So I'll never forget that moment. So,
That's awesome.
Again, I think people are starting to relate to it, especially
That's
the
funny.
millennials, and it's a matter of time that people will be comfortable with it.
So, but do you think, as you say that, it'll just be the norm? Because you just said that.
Yes.
Because as your children are just saying that, my children have their driver's license. That's their norm. Just like everything, there will just become things that are the norm for the children and their children's children. So that will be. So as we see as technology advances, certain things will just be the norm that they will not know. Just like, reading a map is no longer the norm. It's
Right.
GPS. So are we just, this discussion we have, will people become comfortable, is almost mute, because it's not a matter, it's just going to happen. We're going to have autonomous vehicles, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yes. No, I think it is reality at this point. Autonomous vehicles will be on the road some point in the near future. And, again, it's up to us as an industry to get people's comfort levels up. Again, in my role at IBM and as IBM, we are playing our part to drive more education around autonomous vehicles. Quick example is our partnership with Local Motors. 2 years back, with Local Motors, we launched Ollie, which is the world's first self-driving electric autonomous vehicle. And this year at CES, we are proudly showcasing accessible Ollie, which was launched, or not launched, but the idea of accessibility was discussed last year at CES with the CTA Foundation, really helping us bring that idea to the forefront. And just in the last year alone, with IBM, the CTA Foundation, and Local Motors, and 15 other ecosystem partners, we've co-created a variety of applications in a living lab that we're showcasing at the CES to really bring the world's most accessible self-driving vehicle to the market. It's still a living lab, but you can actually come to our booth and actually experience 4 different personas. So whether you have whether you have limited mobility, or in a wheelchair, or have a walking stick, or you have a cognitive impairment, or have a vision impairment, with each different persona and the technologies we've brought to fruition, we've personalized the experience of mobility for all of them, because accessibility is a huge issue today. 1 billion people have some form of disability, and even for the aged, 10,000 people turn 65 or older every day in North America. So with accessible Ollie and autonomous, what we've tried to demonstrate is how mobility is going to become more inclusive, more personalized, more safer, and help people get from point A to point B.
Isn't that really the next evolution? I think when we talk about autonomous vehicles, it's not about whether we, the average American, is going to have an autonomous, but how we're helping the aged, how we're helping the disabled, because that's really what we should think about. It's not whether we're going to get comfortable, but what autonomous vehicles are going to do and help those that are impaired. And I think that's what we're really saying now, because you just described, we have a very aging population that is going to be able to need these kinds of services. That's going to change, because as we get older, there's a lot more people getting older that aren't going to be able to drive but want to live an active life, and this is what's going to enable that.
Oh, absolutely. That's why we call it inclusive mobility, or mobility for all. And this is a great example, as IBM's coined the term, cognitive systems, or augmented intelligence instead of artificial intelligence, because we believe the role of AI is to amplify human experiences and really build a new partnership between humans and machines. So this is a great example where AI is actually amplifying human experiences, making lives better for us as humans and not replacing them.
And that's an interesting thing, because when we talk about AI and we talk about, people always think robots and they think robots are going to take over. With Watson, I think you showed that we're showing how they work side by side, hand in hand, and then that takes the fear out of people, because they instantly think Watson's replacing everything. Watson's going to make every decision. With Watson, I think IBM is showing that there's a side by side working hand in hand in lots of different things that you're doing, and it's in lots of industries. It's
Absolutely.
in the medical side of things. It's helping in healthcare and those kind of industries as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's across industries. If you come to our Watson Primer booth, you see a variety of examples where, again, the idea is to showcase several case studies where, we actually amplifying human experiences with the use of cognitive technologies like Watson. It's about improving productivity. It's about helping technicians fix right first time. It's about helping diagnose disease much faster and eliminating human error. So it's not about replacing jobs. Clearly with every evolution, there will be some jobs that will be automated or replaced, but there'll be a lot more newer jobs created. We call them new collar jobs. And it's just fascinating how AI is creating demand for so many new jobs. I mean, look at data science by itself and the absolute dearth we have for data scientists. So
will we be able to connect what we say in this data scientist, our cars, with our doctors when things are happening, when we have these autonomous vehicles, that our doctors will know when we're in these autonomous vehicles, when we're having an irregular heartbeat? Will all of these things be connected to our lives, that from, we talk about our aged or whatever's happening, or as us, however we are, that are things that are happening, they'll all be connected one day, and that'll help us live a fuller life?
Oh, absolutely. I think as we get more connected, especially on the health side, there's amazing use cases out there that can detect a increase in blood pressure, again, with just the wristband that you're wearing or sensors in the seat. There's just fascinating things that actually already being showcased at CES.
And those cars are going to drive us right to the hospital.
Absolutely.
Right there?
Absolutely. They'll take you straight to the hospital, switch to autonomous mode. You don't even have to
and
worry
the doctor's
about
going to be right there waiting for us, right? That's going to be the perfect dream, right? We won't have any heart attacks there. What's your vision of the future? When you think about all the things you've been working on, what's the really neat thing? I know you talk about a lot of things. What do you see as your vision of the future?
Again, like I said, I see a vision, again, putting my industry hat on, especially in urban environments, autonomous vehicles becoming the norm, getting you from point A to point B, people having the gift of time and really having the freedom to do whatever they want while they're stuck in traffic and not worrying about it, and actually using their time to connect with their loved ones, or reading a book, or actually having a productive meeting, or catching a snooze in the car. Again, we talked about health and the benefits associated with, just living more healthier lives, living more connected lives. I think the future is just fascinating with everything that we've already discussed.
We talked about we haven't talked about, but we have an urbanization crisis that's going to happen by 2030. So we have to figure out how we're going to manage that. Are those things that at Watson you've been looking at, because they talk about we have to figure out food and managing that whole crisis that's going to happen because of that situation of that
Absolutely.
happening?
I mean, talking about food, and again, in the automotive industry context, at least for IBM, companies like Caterpillar, John Deere, etc., also fall, again, in my industry. I've spent a ton of time with Deere myself. Everyone's focused on what they call the 2050 food gap, with how fast the population's growing and the natural resources are depleting. By 2050, there will be a food gap, meaning just the amount of resources available won't be sufficient to feed the population on Earth. And the only thing that can solve that is data science, and how we apply AI, IoT, and other capabilities to drive better yields for farmers, help them decide, what to plant, when, etc. So there's a lot of fascinating science going into agriculture. It's called precision agriculture. And then, with the acquisition of the weather company, there are just amazing things you can do to make these decisions and actually automate them.
And won't that impact how the distribution that is to how we transport all of that? So then we have to think about that with our automotive types ways of things being done through the cities, our cars and things like that as well.
It affects the entire value chain or supply chain, if you will, all the way from, again, designing of vehicles, manufacturing them, the logistics, aftermarket sales support. The whole value chain is being transformed with everything being connected, and then how data is being put to use to make these decisions much faster.
And we're thinking about that all the way now, because every connected car we have has to think about, in our infrastructure, we're thinking about how Amazon's going to have, how UPS, everybody's going to have to be in this supply chain, because you can't have autonomous vehicles being connected without figuring out how's Amazon going to supply food, or how we're going to pick up our waste, all of these things, garbage pickup, all of these things have to work in tandem, right? Aren't these things that we have to figure out with all of this to make the autonomous vehicle work?
Absolutely. That's why I think the ecosystem plays a key role in our strategy, and I know everyone's strategy today. It's not just about working in isolation, bringing a great technology to the marketplace to really drive adoption across all the use cases you mentioned. It really needs an ecosystem to come together to put these capabilities to use in an integrated manner to really drive adoption.
Sachin, it was great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Listeners, that was more than you can understand with all this great technology that's happened. IBM Watson is doing some great things in the connected car space and autonomous vehicles and so much more. So I hope you enjoyed this segment. And if you want to tweet at Peggy_Smedley or ConnectedWMag. Thanks for listening as always. This is the Peggy Smedley Show, the podcasting voice of IoT and relevant technology. And as you know, remember, with great technology comes great responsibility. Stick around, we'll be right back right after this break.